welcome back to Snake Limited. I'm John, and today I want to take a look at the new ARS rat rack that I purchased recently, actually the week before Christmas. I never thought that 2022 would be a year in which, in my snake breeding journey, that I would be spending more money on infrastructure than I would have been spending on actual snakes. I didn't really buy a whole lot this year in terms of snakes. I bought a couple key pieces. But I think I purchased two rat racks, one from Freedom Breeder, one from ARS, and I believe two snake racks as well, a hatchling rack and another 5540. Plus I purchased a new generator. I purchased a battery backup for my incubator. I purchased a transfer kit so that in case the energy or the electric goes out in my house, I can transfer my circuits inside the house, including the snake room, out to my generator. And purchase dedicated water line to go to the rat racks. So I have invested a lot into the infrastructure of my breeding facility here that I have in my basement. And so this is kind of exciting because now we're going into 2023, and I will be really focusing solely on the snakes at this point. We had a quiet year, I think 5 clutches in 2022, but 2023 should be huge. So let's take a look at this rat rack. All right, here is the new rat rack that I purchased from ARS. This is the Freedom Breeder here on this side. And the reason I like this one is because I was able to get the 2 different size tubs in there so that I could have like breeders and the females. But I had those 2 wooden rat racks that I would use for grow outs before. They weren't built really well. I didn't like how they looked in here, to be honest, and they took up a lot more space. This one has 70 series tubs in it, and it has 24 of them. It takes up a lot less space. It's easier to move around, and I'm not worried about it breaking apart. I also love that it actually matches the other ARS racks that I have in here for the snakes. It's built extremely well. It looks exactly the same as the snake racks, although I have the hybrid snake racks, so they have like these little plastic joints and everything. The rails are plastic in here, but you would never know that, just from looking at the rat rack itself. These are still all metal. It actually came in a week. I think I ordered it like 2 weeks or the week before Christmas, and it came the week of Christmas. I was extremely surprised at how fast it was coming because they did not actually have lead times for them listed on the website. But I'm extremely happy with this rat rack. I'm so glad that I purchased it. It's going to allow me to breed a lot more rats. And as I've been growing my snake collection, unfortunately, it's been harder to get the ones that I purchased that are a little older to actually change over to frozen thawed. And I've kind of given up doing so. So the ones that I've bred or raised as hatchlings, it's been easy for me to, get them on the frozen thawed and keep them on frozen thawed. But the ones that I've purchased that have been a half a year to a year old, that were already feeding alive, have basically been impossible to switch over to live, or to frozen thawed, I'm sorry. And I've kind of just stopped trying. Now I have the ability to really grow out as many rats as I need for my purposes as of right now. These tubs are very big. They're, I think, the same size as the 70 series snake rack. They're huge, so they fit quite a few rats in them, especially when they are smaller rats. And it also allows me, if I need to breed more, I can pull some of the bigger males and females, put them in here, and breed them in there as well. I also have the water lines that I have. When I purchased the Freedom Breeder rack, I bought the little valve that hooks up to the water spigot that controls the water flow, which is a very, very, very smart purchase on my end now that I'm looking back at it. And I just ran the water line all the way down here, and I have it coming down to this rack and to this rack, so I do not have to worry about the big buckets anymore, the reservoirs. It's made it really easy to keep the rats watered and fed. A little less maintenance, not having to worry about water every day, especially because once you get a bunch of rats in here, there's 24 tubs in here. I don't know how much water they would go through in a week, but those are 5-gallon buckets, and guess what? I can't fit them in here anyways because of how short this is. Actually, the reason I did this was this Freedom Breeder rack's a little taller. I could not fit a 5-gallon bucket up top, so I had to use the water line and get that installed. But they go through water pretty fast when you have all these tubs filled with rats. So I'm glad that I got the water line installed, and it's an automatic watering system. All right, so that ARS rack got here extremely fast. I think it was literally a week from the time I purchased it till the time it was actually delivered. And they actually delivered it the week before Christmas, I believe like the 20th or 21st. So I'm very happy with them. The last 2 racks that I purchased from ARS, one was a snake rack, one was a rat rack. They were both here in a week from the time of me ordering it. So extremely fast lead times that I was very happy with. And I'm going to show you guys a comparison that I've made between the Freedom Breeder rat rack that I purchased earlier in the summer and the ARS rack that I just purchased a few weeks back. All right, now for the pros and cons between these 2 racks, between owning the ARS or the Freedom Breeder. When I bought this Freedom Breeder rack over the summer of 2022, the main reason I did it was because I was able to get the bigger tubs at the bottom and the smaller tubs at the top. These smaller tubs are where I put the females when they're pregnant, and when they give birth, I keep them in there while they're probably still crawlers. Once they're crawlers, I move them out and put them in a grow out tub so they could finish nursing the baby rats, and then I would just rotate. After they were done, after the rats were weaned, I would move the moms back into these breeding tubs with the males, so on and so forth, and that's how I would cycle them out. So this was perfect because it allowed me to save space by having individual tubs for the moms rather than leaving the moms in the bigger tubs with a male and another female. It allowed me to pull the females out. It would allow me to figure out which females were having nice size litters, and those are the females I'd keep around. And if a female had a small litter, I would just feed her off. That's just kind of the way it works. You know, good females for me, I usually keep them around if they have 10 plus babies in a litter. You know, anything less than that, or anything I see that's, you know, genetically wrong. If there's, I've had some females where they're giving birth and some of the babies are missing tails, things like that. It's just kind of the way it goes. You want to make sure that you're kind of breeding healthy feeders for your rats. So that's what I would do, and that's the easiest way to do it, is to have the females giving birth in their own tubs and kind of seeing what sort of you know, offspring they have. So that was the reason that I chose this rack over any of the ARS racks, because you were able to customize what levels you could get in a rack and how many of them, and mix and match. I still did not see that available when I purchased this ARS rack in December of 2022. Although that's not what I needed. I just needed a bunch of grow out bins, so that's why I went with this. But that's kind of where I believe the positives over the ARS rack end for the Freedom Breeder rack. I believe in every other aspect of this that I prefer the ARS racks. I'm not a metallurgical engineer here, but I believe these are called, this is powder coated metal. It just kind of has a nicer, softer feel, and it's what the other snake racks have, as opposed to kind of just this stainless steel look that the Freedom Breeder runs have. Also, all of these joints in the ARS racks are welded and smoothed over, and that was a big gripe that I had with these Freedom Breeder runs when I originally bought it, is none of them fit like that. None of them are welded smoothly, and some of these can be extremely sharp if you kind of catch it in the wrong spot. So overall appearance wise, this looks nicer to me. It looks cleaner. It's welded very smoothly. You can't even see the joint in some of these. Some of these you can see the welds. Some of them you cannot. But it looks a lot cleaner to me than the way that these Freedom Breeder ones are put together. I also like the mesh up here, the tops of the racks. These holes are a little bigger. I like the shape of them better. Now I've only had this for a week and a half here, so I can't tell you whether or not anything's going to get stuck in here while they're trying to eat. But in this Freedom Breeder rack, I have had at least one rat per week, whether it's an adult or a smaller rat, get stuck in these holes when they're trying to feed from the trough in the back over there. They're also very sharp. This is kind of the same issue that I had with the Vision rat rack that I purchased last year, I think in 2021. The rats get their faces stuck in here and they basically get their faces mangled off. This is a terrible, terrible design. It's the same issue that I had with the Vision rack. I can't believe that they're still using this design. I can't believe that these aren't kind of a little more rounded off like this. Like the ARS one here, there are no sharp edges on these, on this grating. As you can see, the holes are a little bigger than what these holes are here. It's just a terrible design for the mesh when the rat. Other people had to have had the issue where the rats are getting their faces stuck in there. Again, since I've had this, probably once every week, once every other week, a rat's gotten stuck in there, and I've had to get a pair of like my feeding tongs to kind of pry their face out of that mesh so that they didn't get mangled up. Again, I haven't had it happen here yet, but I don't think I will. I think because of the design of it and the fact that the holes are a little bigger and because of the fact that this is a lot smoother. So that's another kind of big positive in the ARS rack versus what's going on here with the Freedom Breeder rack. The lead time on this ARS rack was also basically a week versus the Freedom Breeder rack took, I think, around 12 weeks to get here. They were, I believe, Freedom Breeders are still that far back. ARS didn't really have any language on the website about their rat racks only basically being ready to go upon buying them. I don't know if that's all of the rat racks that are like this, but when I bought my 5540, that also took a week to get here, and I bought that, I think, at the end of the summer. This took a week to get here as well. This took 12 weeks. So lead time is huge, especially if you need it now. Now, as far as shipping goes, the issue I had with ARS is this actually came shipped in 2 enormous boxes on top of a pallet, whereas the Freedom Breeder rack came built like this on a pallet. Now, as far as protection of the rat goes, you know, if let's say the freight shipper dropped this and knocked it over, it probably would have bent the frame because it really just was shipped like this and there was some padding around the outside of it and it was shipped directly on top of the pallet. The nice thing about that though is it was really easy to assemble and move. This was shipped, there's 8 levels here. There were 4 levels in one box and 4 levels in another box. And they were shipped on a pallet that was that high. As you can see here, I'm not super tall. This is probably, you know, it's a level taller than me. Plus it was on top of a pallet that's, I don't know, what, 6 inches tall. Plus they were in 2 ginormous boxes. So when you're trying to unload this by yourself, it can become a problem. What I ended up having to do was the box that was on top, I just had to completely disassemble the box so that I could get into the levels because the levels were already assembled. You know, the water lines were already on here, the tubs were already in place, the troughs were already on there. I believe that was the case with the Freedom Breeder rack too, so they all come fully assembled. The levels were all together, but obviously there is no one single person who's going to be carrying 4 levels of a rat rack by themselves. So I had to rip apart the whole top box. I had to take out each level one by one and carry them downstairs because I thought that would be easier for me to do. And then I had to, it was easier, the bottom box, I was just able to flip it up on its side and just pull the levels out by one. So it's a little more difficult to assemble this one because it doesn't come assembled like this. It comes assembled in halves. And I don't think that you would be able to put the casters on this without taking it apart either. Whereas I think the way the Freedom Breeder shipped this is I believe you're able to get the casters on here. They were not on when you buy it, but you are able to get the casters on without actually having to take it completely off of the pallet. So this, for as far as like ease of use, once getting it, this was a lot easier than the ARS. This took a couple extra steps and a little extra muscle, but it's not like it was, you know, painful to do. The other issue is that I had with the Freedom Breeder rack, speaking of casters, and I said about this in the other video, and I don't know exactly where it was, but it's somewhere along the outside edge of the casters here on the plates that the casters come on. There was something extremely sharp, and on one of my hands, I like filleted my finger open like all the way across it, profusely bleeding all over the place. So it seems kind of apparent to me that the way Freedom Breeder manufactures their metal, that it's just kind of like you need to use work gloves. You need to be very cautious with it. The rats seem to have an issue with it as well. Whereas the way that the metal is manufactured here with the ARS rack is a lot kind of safer to handle for you and for the rats to live in. I really, upon putting this together, you know, I didn't really find anything that was extremely sharp, even on the back edges. You know, maybe on these troughs right here, it's kind of hard, kind of rough, but you're not really going to be touching that a whole lot. You're just going to be dumping food in there, and nobody really has, the rats don't have contact with it either. But all this metal, the rails, the side rails, the vertical rails, the joints aren't very rough. Everything that's welded together is welded together pretty smoothly. And overall, I just think it's to me nicer looking with this powder coated metal than with like the stainless steel look. And the welds just kind of look a lot nicer as well. So I definitely prefer the ARS rack over the Freedom Breeder for basically everything I said, except for the fact that the Freedom Breeders can come in different levels. This has been really, really helpful for me, because I've been able to put the pregnant females up here by themselves and rotate them around as needed. But if ARS offers that option in the future, and I do need more rat racks, I will definitely be going with an ARS for those purposes. Maybe they do have that option, but when I was shopping for this one, I didn't see that you were able to customize them. But hopefully, if they don't offer it, they do offer it very soon, because I feel like this is the superior product. The last big difference here between these two racks, and I think this is something you can change when you order Freedom Breeder. I believe I chose these diaphragm nipples because I read that people like them better. I absolutely hate them. These, you kind of have to adjust them by like spinning it and tightening it or loosening it, depending on how much water flow you want. However, they don't seem to work consistently. This tub here, this nozzle, I have had to adjust this one many a times, and I've actually stopped putting rats in here for a while until recently, because if you tighten it too much, the water stops flowing altogether. If you loosen it a little too much, then it'll flood the whole entire tub. And there's no like gray area with it. It's either not running or it's flooding the tub. I think I've found the kind of happy spot there with it, but I've had that, you know, out of this whole entire rack. Maybe I've had it happen to like 4 or 5 specific places. I think it was like maybe this tub and maybe one of these ones up here and maybe one of the ones down here, so maybe 3 tubs. But it's the same ones over and over and over again. So I don't know if they're just faulty, but they're like way too finicky, especially when it means that you're either flooding out and killing animals in there or just not able to use it when all you're supposed to be doing is breeding rats and you're not worried about flooding them. Whereas these regular, let me see if I can grab this out of here. These ones in ARS are kind of the ones that you would buy from the hardware store if you were building your own rat rack. They're just like the spring-loaded ones, and water just comes out. I've never had one of these flood. I've had two rat racks that I build by myself, and neither one of them ever had an issue with flooding or leaking from those spring-loaded ones. I've had issues with them stop working altogether and just not give any water out, which is something you need to kind of be aware of. But I've never had an issue with them flooding, which I think is the bigger issue, because they could flood overnight and kill everything. Whereas if you're checking them every day and for some reason water gets cut off, yeah, the rat's not going to be in great health, but at least it's not going to kill them right away if you catch it really fast. So I don't like the diaphragm nozzles or nipples or whatever you want to call them. If you have the option to get the regular spring-loaded brass ones, I would probably go with those from Freedom Breeder. I didn't even see ARS gave an option to pick one or the other, so I just went with what was the default here, and I definitely prefer the regular old spring-loaded brass ones. As you can see from that comparison, I'm pretty much ARS all the way at this point. They're actually closer to me. I believe they're in Indianapolis or somewhere outside of Indianapolis, whereas Freedom Breeder's out in California. So shipping's quicker, it's usually cheaper, and their lead times are a lot lower. And on top of that, I just feel like the look, the aesthetic of the ARS racks, the safety in using them for me and for the animals that are living in them, they're safer. Pricing is around the same. The only positive in my mind that Freedom Breeder has over ARS is that you can customize the different levels that you have in the rat rack. If ARS starts doing that, I believe that they kind of have the whole game in their hands, and they're kind of on top of it. So I'm very happy with ARS. Every time I've dealt with them, I've actually ordered frozen rodents from them too. Just top notch, great experience with them all around. Very happy with them. So I highly recommend you guys go with ARS for all your rack needs, for rodent racks, for snake racks, and even your frozen food needs.